even though I dreamt about being normal for the majority of my life, screw that. I'm done with being normal. I'm done with being average. I'm gonna be different, and I'm gonna freaking shine being different.
What's going on, Cylinder Radio listeners? If you're interested in the nuance of dialogue and things like that, check out my freebie download, Debate to Dialogue, How to Have Productive Conversations About Politics and Religion. Hello and welcome to the next episode of Cylinder Radio. I'm your host, Will Roosh, high school teacher in Los Angeles, trying to bring viewpoint diversity and nuanced stories and perspectives on all kinds of topics throughout society. My guest today, I've been trying to get on the podcast for a while. We've been talking for quite some time and finally arranged to have it here. I'm really excited. Ben Kjar. He is a motivational speaker, wrestler, has an upcoming documentary and book coming out, and has a really awesome story and a perspective on life that could benefit my students and benefit people listening. And I'm just really stoked to talk to him. Ben, welcome to the podcast. I'm really stoked to have you on here and really get into what is the secret sauce that you have that you just it seems to be just flowing through your veins about the way that you approach life and everything like that. Thank you for being here. Can you just introduce yourself to the audience? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and everything like that for the people that aren't familiar.
Yeah. Will, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. You're exactly what the world needs for schools and students and youth. Seriously.
Thanks, man.
I wish the whole world could have people like you in the classroom that teach our youth how to live by principles and values at a time. So appreciate you. We chatted a little bit before this call, and man, you're just stellar. To answer your question, a little bit about Ben Kjar. You can go to my website, benkjar.com, benkjar.com, and read more in depth about my family. And that's a whole nother journey about how we, miscarriage after miscarriage, failed adoption after failed adoption. And then finally we were able to adopt 3 kids in 13 months and turn our world totally upside down the right way. And it's just a beautiful thing. My kids, just 2 of them, I have 2 that are 5 days apart. 4 and 3. 2 of them got, graduated from preschool today. And so my family's everything. If you ask me who I am, I live by 6 principles. Every year I set my goals and aspirations based upon these 6 things. And I strive to live in this priority with these principles. And that number 1, that's faith. Now, some people have a faith, whether that's religion or deity, but beyond that, I believe that we should have faith in ourselves. So if you ask me, what's the superpower? Well, I think the superpower is being able to live by superpower principles. So my number 1 superpower principle is faith. How do I show up for me? If I have a connection and a relationship with deity, that's even more awesome. And once you realize that and put that in your life, that's you fight for more than just yourself. And then number 2 is family. How do we show up for our family? Are we living a lie? Are we happy? Are we showing up at 100% of ourselves? Or are we just showing up 80% for our spouse and our kids?
Yeah.
Fitness is my 3rd superpower, right? Principle. And that's mental and physical fitness. A lot of us go to the gym, we push the weights around, right? And we're really tough. But we don't go to the mind gym. There's a mental gym. How do we put repetitions in the mental gym, right? How do we show up? What's our membership look like? Really, it's, do you have a mentor? Right? What do you tell yourself in the mirror? And then 4th is finances. How are we financially providing for ourselves, our family? And not just that, how are we providing for others, right? How are we providing for others? I have stories for each and every one of these. I can just go into dissections and what they mean for ourselves and other people. And then 5th is fun. Are we having fun? This life is meant to be enjoyed, right? We're meant to be happy. And I think we often forget that. I've forgotten that. I'll tell you that first and foremost. I've forgotten that in my life numerous times. And I get so tenacious and it's not hard for me to work. I like working, but do we have fun? And then lastly is fulfillment. Are we a giver? Are we a go-giver? Are we a person that is looking for ways to serve others? What are the things that actually fulfill you? When I've been on phone calls, with just recently with billionaires, with a B, people that have money they can't even spend it so much, right, in their lifetime, and they weren't fulfilled because they were chasing money, thinking that would fulfill them. And Money's a beautiful thing, but if you think that's going to fulfill you, you're absolutely wrong. So if you ask me what my superpower is, well, those are my superpower principles. And those are the things I live by. Now, if I have spare time or I have free time, I just go down that list. Okay, where am I in faith? Where am I in family? Where am I in fitness? And I just go down the list and be, if I have time, where should I spend my focus and time next? And those have been things that have served me, served my family, and served others. And it's allowed me to show up and try to leave a legacy for myself and other people so I can be, somewhat remembered when I've gone away from this earth.
Yeah, is that like you take like a personal inventory? Like, all right, how am I doing on the faith kind of, like check that. How am I doing on fitness? And then you kind of can see like if you're not feeling up to your best, you maybe one of those is lacking. It gives you like a nice checklist, kind of like a guide. When you mention faith, you say like, faith in yourself. Would that be like confidence? And how does that equate to? I'm diving into talking more about like religious faith, just because I'm kind of new to my own religious faith, and it's served me in ways that it's really weird, man. It's so weird. Like I'm 40 years old. I'm like, I guess you categorize me as like a born again Christian, and I don't know how, but it's made my life better, immeasurably better in every way. And it doesn't really make sense. But as soon as I like commit myself to this, I'm going to buy into this story. I'm going to buy into these ideas. And that just makes my life better, more fulfilling. It makes me better when I'm scared. It makes me better when I'm happy. When you mention faith, like how much of that would be aligned with like believing in something greater than yourself? And how much of that would be the faith in yourself? Like, is there like a way that you kind of like compartmentalize those two?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think they're tied hand in hand. And I don't think that's what people realize. I'm going to give you an example to me that ties those exactly together. And I don't think the world thinks of it this way. And I share this pretty often because I love it so much. So you had said you were born again Christian being the base, coming off the root word of Christ, right?
Yeah.
And we all know Jesus Christ, was an individual that many people believe was the chosen one, the Son of God, Savior, Redeemer of the world, yada, yada, yada. He has so many nicknames, right? And in the good book, he says he was the one that would come and be the great I am. Well, if you go down that path of I am, those are two of the most interesting words in mankind. Many people who believe in Jesus Christ believe that he was the only person to come to this earth that we know about that lived a perfect life. And we all go to church and we sing, be like Christ. I want to be like Jesus, right? Be like him. How can we be more Christ-like? WWJD.
Just going to say, yeah.
Right? All these things. Yeah. But yet I think we forget how to live like him. So let me go down that path and give you even a deeper example. We often think that if we're going to be like Jesus and we're going to be perfect, everybody has to like us. Where we forget that, number one, Jesus was actually killed by his own people. And he was the perfect guy. And so here's like the mistake here. Everyone's like, yeah, be like Jesus. Love everybody, which he did, but it doesn't mean everybody loved him. And so the moment that somebody doesn't love you is the moment you're like, I'm doing something wrong. Oh no, I got to bend everything that I am and have meant to be and have created my life to be and have put my beliefs into being, and I got to be what these people want me to be like. And that's number one, incorrect. Going down another path and further down the path of the words I am. And this goes and crosses over into belief. And this is what completely started to change my life when I started to understand what this meant, I am, and who said it best. Jesus Christ had the most powerful I am statement. If you go in the good book, you go in the scripture, you put I am and then everything else after what Jesus said he was. I just said a bunch of them. Savior, Redeemer, Lamb of God, Son of God, Alpha and Omega. I mean, you name it, right? And he just went down, boom, 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 the beginning and the end. He's the water, he was the everything. But yet, if we look in the mirror as Christians, if we look in the mirror as believers, if we look in the mirror, we're like, oh, I'm so ugly. I'm so fat. I'm worthless. And yet we go to church, we're like, let's be like Jesus. And we're like, we have no freaking clue how to be like Jesus.
Or we're kind to everybody else, and we're doing the reverse I am, and we're saying you are, and it's all beautiful, but yet everything internal is absolutely slaughtering who we really are. And if we really do believe we're a son and daughter of God,
like it says in the good book, why in the freak are we tearing ourselves apart every day?
It's made in his image, right?
In his image.
Yeah.
Built like him. We're created like him.
Yeah.
A spirit like him. We now have a body like him. He had a body of flesh and bone. Yeah. Right? He could hurt. Now he wasn't mortal. We're not that. He was sent here for a little bit different reason than why we're sent here. But in the same breath, I'm going to say this. This is where it changed my mentality of my positive self-talk. So just so you don't think I'm going up on a crazy tangent. You ask, how do we liken or separate religion and like our own like positive self-belief about ourselves almost mentality?
Yeah, you do understand, because like I think a lot of people say like I don't need organized religion. You know, I know right from wrong in my heart, and they kind of make up their own version of God, kind of in the way that they want to see it, like in their image, not the other way around.
Sure. And I think that hey, if that works for you, great. 100%. For me, let me tell you why Jesus works for me, because he is given the perfect example. Even though he was the most humble, the most perfect, the most selfless man that literally gave his life for us. He literally had the most powerful I am statement when he would be in like the court of the kings of the land that he was a part of. And when they would bring him in and they would tie him up in shackles, he had no way to break out of those as a physical mortal man, I should say. They would look at him, spit upon him, whip him, and then look at his face as he comes in, beaten down. And they would say this, the king of the land, the king of the area that he was a part of would say this, Jesus, people say you're this, this, and this. Who do you say you are? And at that moment, the most perfect man on earth, the most humble man on earth, the Son of God, the great Redeemer would look at the king right in his face, and he would tell the king, I am the King of Kings. Now, as you think about that, would we ever say that? I think a lot of people would say we're arrogant. You're arrogant if you say that. You're cocky. You're full of yourself. And I would say that we would have it mixed up and messed up to say that. Oprah Winfrey, I don't agree with everything she says, but she is a phenomenal woman. And she's an incredible leader in many, many ways. She was on a podcast or an interview one time, and they said, Oprah, many people say that you are full of yourself. What do you say to that? And she looks around and she said, also tactfully, it was really cool. She said, what would you want me to be? Would you want me to be empty of myself? Oh, and so I'm like, well, I think oftentimes people think to be meek, which they misunderstand what that word means, because meek is so powerful. I define it as being like a Clydesdale, like stallion, horse, so powerful, so fast. Every step, the muscles are like rippling and just like coming at you. And then the moment the master says stop, you stop because you know who the master is.
I've heard Jordan Peterson say something like that, like being like a warrior that has it under control, something like that. Yeah. I wasn't sure where you were going, and I was like, that makes so much sense. So it's the idea of really knowing who you are and believing in yourself to like a deep, deep point. That's that, and then aligning that, the ultimate aim, the person that you're trying to aim up to be like, and connecting those. That makes a lot of sense, Ben. Yeah,
well, brother, that's what we're doing here, brother.
Yeah.
All we do is go deep. We don't go do shallow waters. Not in my world.
You're in the right place.
The world is mixed up in how we should show up.
Yeah.
Men around the world are playing small, dude.
Play it small.
They're playing way small because they think that's how we deserve to be. They think that's how to fit in. Forget it, baby. I don't fit in. I just don't fit in. I'll never forget one time where I just got verbally assaulted in public at a grocery market. I ran home. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. I run into my dad's office, off the dad's office.
I want to hear the story real quick, but let me just, sorry to interrupt, because some people might just be listening to this on audio and stuff like that. You have something called Crouzon Syndrome. So like that's I'm guessing that's where this comes from. Just for people that don't know what that is, or like they look at you like, oh, there's something going on with him. Like, what is that? Like, can you just explain that? And then I do want to hear the story though.
Absolutely. Crouzon Syndrome. No, thanks for mentioning that. I forgot we hadn't mentioned that yet. And Crouzon Syndrome is a rare craniofacial anomaly. In English terms, it means that my face looks a lot different. And the mid part of my face grows at a different speed. And so I've had to have massive reconstructive facial surgeries. Like they've cut my head open from ear to ear, take bones from different parts of my bodies and put it in. And
what if they wouldn't have done that? What would have happened?
Well, my skull wouldn't have grown, at the same speed. It probably would have affected the way my brain was able to grow.
Okay.
At the same time, I would have a massive, massive underbite. I mean, I got so deep into wrestling, it's so competitive. You and I have chatted about this, that I didn't want to get surgery. I didn't want to, take 2 years off in high school. So I didn't get surgeries for a number of years, about 15 years. And it got so bad, I could put 2 fingers in my mouth, bite down and not touch my fingers. And it affected the way I would eat. I mean, it affected the way I would breathe. It would affect the way I would sleep. It would definitely affect the way I would look. And so if you look at me, go on Facebook, on social media, going anywhere, you'll be able to see right from get-go that it's not that I don't have an arm or a leg or I have scars on my back. It's the first thing that you see, right?
Yeah.
And so people notice it right away. And that's exactly what the adult noticed in the grocery store.
Okay.
And so basically...
When you were, how old was this?
I was in elementary. I was young. And I'll never forget when he was in the grocery store in front of everyone. He said, hey, he grabs his 2 kids. They're about my age. And he said, hey, look at that kid. Look how funny he looks in front of everybody. And he said, I can't believe he has any friends. Can you believe that kid goes out in public? And then after he paid for his groceries, he grabbed his kids, put them behind him, and like they're getting away from a monster. He said, but don't go near him and don't touch him because he's probably contagious. I don't want you to get that. And that's what broke me. I live now by a mantra that's victor over victim. And I firmly believe that we set our legacies and we define what people remember us by the decision that we make in the darkest of times. I'll give you an example of Christ again. He's on the cross. The dudes are like bedding over him right at his feet while he's dying. And Jesus, the man, the coolest dude on the earth, is suffering, bleeding. And he says, forgive them for they do not know what they do. Like, are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me? Right out of the Garden of Gethsemane, he just bled from every pore for the sins of the world. And his buddies finally wake up. One of his own tries to trade him for some coin. And one of his guys steps up, boom, like takes off the ear of one of the guards. Well, what would Jesus do? In the darkest of times, what would he do? Now, this is what I'm saying. We all say be Christ-like, be all these things, but are we really that? Well, let's give an example. Jesus, instead of saying, oh, yeah, what are you doing? Yeah, take that. We got more weapons. We got more swords. Boom, we'll come at you. We'll take you all out. Now, he didn't need swords, dude, but by the wave of a hand, he had the power of God to be able to do it. But instead, he grabs the ear of the man, puts it back on his head, and heals him. I mean, in the darkest of times, what did this man do? So I was in that darkness of time. I get home, going back to the store. I get home, ran into the bathroom at my home, and my mom comes in. And I just tried to figure out a way in a young mind to take off my face physically. And my mom came in, and we had just chatted a couple minutes ago about different, standing out. And I was so sick of being different. I was so tired of sticking out. I was so sick and tired of getting like attention. And my mom looked at me, picked me up off the ground, made me look in the mirror, and she said, Ben, you're different, so why don't you freaking make a difference? You're gonna get attention, so why don't you use the attention and use it for good? And so today in life, well, I think people are not willing to stick out. They're not willing to be different. It's a robotic disease. We fall into average, we fall into minimal, we fall into normal, and it's just absolutely sickening because society is afraid to live because of what people say. And it's sad because it was a handful of months ago, I was in Florida at my buddy's conference, and there's a man named Ed Milet that got up on stage. Many people probably know him. He speaks all over. And he said, you know what? There's a form of child abuse that we don't talk about enough. Now, I just adopted 3 kids. I'm like, holy smokes, what's this guy talking about? you know? And he's like, it's the form of when parents don't strive to live their dreams. They don't wake up and start accomplishing things that are like scary. And so their kids never know how to do that. The kids never know how to set goals, never know how to achieve them, never know how to fail and bounce back because their parents are so freaking padded by this bubble wrap. That's child abuse because you never show your kids the pathway to true success. And that hit me different. And the moment after that, I left that conference, I made my a goal that I would even live more in F for my kids to see that. And that's why I went down to Vegas a couple of weeks ago and I competed, right? To get a tournament so my kids could sit in the corner after their very first year of wrestling and see their dad not just say it, but see their dad actually do it, you know?
Yeah, which takes into wrestling. You know, I talk a lot about jujitsu. You know, I love martial arts and I did karate and stuff like that. And I'm from like Eastern Pennsylvania, which was a really great place. I grew up right next to like Lehigh University. It's great wrestling there. But I was always so physically weak. I didn't believe it was possible. So I didn't wrestle. I got into jujitsu when I was like 28. Wish I would have wrestled. But you got into wrestling and like you were a top tier wrestler. I saw on YouTube, you have a match that's like, you know, like you just lost about like an inch against Henry Cejudo, who's, you know, an Olympic gold medalist. I mean, you're at the very tippy top of the sport. And the thing about wrestling that people who are listening who don't understand wrestling is like a high school, college, whatever wrestling room is widely seen as like the most grueling, physically and mentally taxing place like that in existence. Like wrestling is a different kind of sport in the amount of grit that it just builds, like the toughness. A lot of times people are too tough, like they're more tough than their own good and they get really badly injured and push through it and get all kinds of messed up and stuff like that. But when you found wrestling, was it a way for you to like take all of your maybe angst or anger or frustration with the hand that you were dealt with Crouzon Syndrome and stuff like that, and the way that people have treated you, and people still do, by the way, you posted something, the stuff people say to you online is horrifying. So like you look at it like, okay, I have all this coming at me. So I'm in this fight, this life, I was dealt this hard hand. I got a 7-2 offsuit to some degree. So now I got to get good at poker. I got to kind of fight the guys who are dealt pocket aces. Was that like a very like tangible, physical way to address kind of what was happening like metaphysically for you in some way, or is that off?
You're right on, man. Yeah. It was a game that my parents had to play first. I mean, you're talking about chess and poker. Let me go down that same verbiage. I mean, my parents that were the real MVPs, because there's no book telling them how to parent someone who looks way different with surgeries and a trach in his throat just to help him breathe and stuff. I mean, they don't know what to do. The doctor said, my dad did contact sports growing up. My mom's brothers, all my uncles did wrestling and football. And the doctors are like, dude, we're cutting this dude's head open. Your boy? Yeah, he's going to live a totally different life. He's not going to do contact sports. Are you kidding me? So like, they're like, well, what do we do? So they put me in clogging, they put me in singing, or they put me in, other stuff that wasn't contact sports until I begged my parents for 5 years, crying, just let me play. Next thing you know, they're like, we're not going to wrap this guy in bubble wrap for the rest of his life. And so it was their decision. They sat down and they said, you know what? This boy is going to need self-confidence. He's going to need something that allows him confidence even more than a normal individual because he looks different.
Yeah.
We're going to put him in everything we can think of and allow him to find something that he can find confidence in. So from indoor soccer to outdoor soccer, from football to baseball to basketball to everything in between, I did it. And for wrestling, I'm 5'3", now like 140 pounds. I'm just built smaller. And wrestling in weight categories, age categories, I'm like, dude, this is my thing. And it wasn't based upon the quarterback throwing a pass to the receiver where the lineman had to block and snap at the right time. It was me. But there was no mask like football. I played football too, loved it. but everyone knew if I lost or won. So when the cadence of my coaches were like running around the room 20 push-ups, you better freaking believe, Will, that 20 push-ups was a minimum, because there's one person in the sport of wrestling that stands up on the top of that podium at the end of the tournament that gets a gold medal. And if my coach told me 20 push-ups, that's a minimum, because everyone else is going to do 20, but not me. That's going to be a goal. That's not where the gold medals are handed to the average people. They're handed to the above average, the super average, the absolutely tenacious beasts. And that's what I wanted to be. So my parents put me in all these sports to allow me confidence. And then when I had the opportunity to play and thrive, like the example of the push-ups, I just chose to thrive, because I knew that, you know what, even though I dreamt about being normal for the majority of my life, screw that. I'm done with being normal. I'm done with being average. I'm going to be different, and I'm going to freaking shine being different. So that's what I did. And I mean, I could tell you story after story about how I improved my confidence, how I showed up for myself, and how that leaked into others, and how my team started thriving because they started believing. Yeah. And how we started breaking records in high school. And it was fun.
That's incredible. I have my boys, they started jujitsu when they were 3, just for the same, it's kind of the same thing. I just want them to have a lot of confidence in that they can be themselves. If they're into theater and kids are going to make fun of them because it's like feminine or something like that, just to be able to be like, look, you got a problem with me. Like, we can go outside and fight. Like, I can strangle with my bare hands if you like. The fact is, just even you being like 5'3" and like a smaller guy, like in high school where you're whatever, like 130 or something like that. People who don't understand this, like the captain of the football team, you could drop him on his head in a second. And like, just knowing that, not that you're a violent person, but just knowing that you have that capability in your back pocket in like guy world, at the end of the day, it's like, I can control your body if I want to. Like, that matters. I think even in like the subconscious, the people who don't train martial arts or something like that don't really understand just how vulnerable they are to someone that trains. So that makes a lot of sense. And just like, so you got into it. Here's a weird question for you, Ben. And you don't really have a way to answer this. You just have to kind of guess. But like, was the fact that you were dealt this tricky hand with this syndrome, like from such an early age, did that make you a better fighter, like make you a better wrestler, a better competitor, because you had a chip on your shoulder? Like, would you be as successful in such a grinding sport had you not been dealt some sort of adversity from the jump? I mean, you don't know, but I wonder.
Crouzon Syndrome is the biggest blessing I've been given individually, and it is my superpower. I would not be on this podcast the same way if I just had a normal face. And it's been like the worst enemy early on in my life to like biggest blessing. And that was a complete mind shift for me. It was a paradigm shift for me to realize, oh my God, like I'm going to get natural attention. Put me and you on TikTok or any social media. They'll naturally look at me a little bit longer just because there's something different. At the beginning, I totally thought that was a disadvantage. Now it's a massive advantage. And absolutely it made me who I was. Absolutely it was an advantage. Let me give you an example. I have a good buddy, Anthony Robles. I just had lunch with him like a month ago. I went and spoke in Arizona. He's from Arizona. Him and I competed, went back and forth competing. He went to Arizona State, went to Utah Valley University. The dude is missing one leg. I mean, all the way up to the hip. Now, when he started, he's lost like every match. When he started, and everyone was like, it's not fair, it's not fair, it's not fair. He's getting killed. It's not fair for him. Well, with the test of time, he gets him in college. And everyone at that point, because he's so freaking strong, he's missing like one of the biggest muscles of his body, his hip and his glute and his whole leg. This dude is jacked. He's wrestling 125 pounds. If he would have his leg, he would have been 165, 175. He would grab my wrist and I felt like a little boy. That dude is a bad man. And it was funny because to kind of mirror what I just said about it being like a disadvantage and I made an advantage, everyone said for him, it's a disadvantage, poor kid. Everyone in college, guess what they were saying?
The same thing, the inverse. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, Ben, how you good at wrestling? It's like so cheating. It's like the biggest disadvantage for you. Like you can't double leg him. Yep. Hard. He's so low to the ground. He's so strong. I said, you know what? He freaking made it that way. He made it a disadvantage. That's so. You think it always was a disadvantage? No, it was the opposite.
Yeah.
Now the guy's a Nike athlete. Now he speaks all over. I respect him so much. And he just signed a contract where, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck are doing his movie, right? And Jennifer Lopez is going to be in the movie. And he made the disadvantage his advantage. When are we going to do that in the world? When's the world going to do that? When is the world going to create their advantages from the darkest of time? When is the world going to take the crappiest thing in the world and make it the shining example of what you can do? There's so much beauty in the world if you just have that abundant mentality.
I love that. When you talk about how Crouzon is like a blessing, I had talked a little bit before we started recording about Sydney Smith on the podcast, who's the Try No Feet on Instagram. He's an Ironman triathlete who has no feet. He has no legs below his knees. And he said the same thing. He's like, I wouldn't change a thing. He's like, this made me, I'm not average. He's like, I'm above average because of this. Like I heard a story from Dan Bilzerian, actually, that like crazy, whatever, Playboy guy. He was on Joe Rogan talking about how a guy was like a former Marine who lost his legs or something like that in war, and then was like partying with him one night and hooked up with some like hot Instagram model or something. And the next morning he was like, he was just like sat down with this Marine. He's just like, so it must just really weigh on you a lot. Like, you don't have legs, man. That really sucks or whatever. And he's like, losing my legs was the best thing that ever happened to me. It's like, what are you talking about? He's like, look, if I didn't, I'd be in a foxhole in Afghanistan, or I'd be working construction or something like that back in my hometown. I'd be a nobody with PTSD. Instead, I'm here partying with you, hooking up with Instagram models. People tell me all the time how I'm an inspiration to them. People give me free stuff. They give me free guns and all kinds of stuff and adventures and stuff like that. That's, I think, a big reason why I really wanted to talk to you about this, is because young people today are looking at all the ways that they've been dealt a bad hand, all the ways that they've been wronged, all the ways that they're a victim. And you know what? Yeah, you are. You want to look at that? You can see all the ways that you're a victim, but what is going to serve you? What is going to be best for you and your family and your community and your world? How is the best way you're going to solve is not to focus on that. It's true. And everyone can find ways that they're a victim, but how are you going to play that hand? And that's just something that I think is really missing from a lot of the narratives that young people are getting. A lot of the things that we see on Instagram, how you have to be perfect, you have to look this way, you have to do this kind of stuff, or all the things that are wrong with you because you're too fat or you're too this, you're too that. And it's like that messaging catches up to kids. And the more that we can promote what you're saying, the more that we can promote what Anthony Robles is doing and Sydney Smith and all these people, like that's the message that these young people need to hear is, I don't care the ways that you are a victim. I care, but don't focus on that. Focus on how that thing is maybe an advantage for you that people don't see coming.
Hey, man, I love that.
Yeah, it's so important, man.
And when you realize there's a gift in everything, in all the dark things, when you realize the world is not going against you, but it's actually working for you, oh, goodness. Like there's so much that you stop fighting as much. I'm not saying you're not tenacious. I'm saying you stop fighting against like what's naturally already beautiful, and you see the world in a different light. I'm telling you, man. And you know what's interesting? I learned this for all the parents out there, which is probably a lot of your listeners. Just realize this. Many of you probably had kids naturally or however, but you did it through pregnancy, which took 9 months. I had kids come to me in a matter of hours. I was on a plane because I adopted them the next day, right? 15 hours, my first boy, Liam. Hey, he was just born tonight. You got to go get him. I'm on the plane the next day. And I learned to be a dad pretty dang quick. I realized so quickly, because I didn't have time to prepare, how I live my life is the immediate default of how he expects his life to be lived. If I get up in the morning and have a morning routine and go work out, he expects that to be life. If I sit at home all day on a couch and just watch TV, that's what his default is. It's no different in mentality. It's no different in nutrition. It's no different in the things that we think. Like when my kids fall down, I'm not one of the parents that runs up to them, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Oh my gosh. We cheer because we don't think it's a dead end. We think it's a new beginning for him to get up. We cheer, hey, get up, let's go, come on. And it changes the paradigm. It changes the way he thinks about it. Now, if you can surround yourself with that and your kids with that, and then the people that you surround yourself with that similar mentality, you will alter their standards. You will alter their default methodology of how life is supposed to be lived. And I think we forget that. We can alter people's reality just by thinking different.
Absolutely. You know, I had a woman, Pamela Garfield, on who's a therapist and a social worker. She was talking a lot about the way that kids are kind of taught today. A lot of like some stuff that's like, I guess, categorized under like woke ideology. But she was saying that they were being told, make sure that these kids know that they're oppressed. And I was like, what is going on here? This is so bananas. I tell these stories in my class because kids like don't get into the college that they want to get into, or they go through a breakup and they're like, this is so bad. And I'm like, maybe. You don't really know yet. You're on page 16 of a 100-page book. You don't really know yet. You know, every breakup I went through that was hard, thank God, because it led me to my wife. My kids wouldn't exist. You know, I use these examples like Magic Johnson, who was like, you know, a great basketball player. He got a call one day, hey, Magic, you have HIV. I'm guessing that was a bad call to get. But if he wouldn't have gotten that call, he's not going to die from AIDS. He's going to use his resources and his name and his wealth to turn HIV into no longer a death sentence. Now he's not just known as being a guy who's good at basketball, but he's known as a guy who helped fight the stereotypes and stuff around HIV. Eliza Hamilton, Alexander Hamilton's wife, lost her husband and her son, and she used all of that. That's the worst, losing a child, but she turned that into something positive and started, you know, a private orphanage in New York City, saved hundreds of lives. You know, you have been dealt a lot of hard hands in life, Ben, and, you know, you're open about the struggles that you had with your wife to start a family, and that's really a tragic thing, and I'm not minimizing that, but if that didn't exist, you wouldn't have your children that you have now, who are your children, and who knows the situation that they would have gone into, but you saved their lives in a lot of ways, and they're being raised by now a savage who's going to teach them that they can absolutely do anything and show it. Is that merely bad news? It's more complex than that. And that's why I try to tell my students, like, you don't know yet. How are you going to turn this into something positive? What are you going to do? How are you going to play this hand?
That's so good, man. It's so good. And when we realize that, then it makes our trials and struggles become an more exciting opportunity. It's easier to say that right now, right? Outside of the trial, outside of the breakup, outside of the death, outside of the bankruptcy, outside of the you just lost your job or whatever. But if you've had enough of them and you see the next thing that happens after that, and what happens after that, and that, you're like, oh my God, God is so good. I'll give you an example. We had 2 miscarriages. We had a little boy and a little girl. Then we go into adoption. We go in and pay 45 grand. We pay our last fee. After 8 months, we get an email. I'm not placing my baby with you. We go into adoption again. And by the way, we're like hundreds of thousands of dollars invested at this point after 4 IVF cycles and all these things. We go into adoption again. After 6 months, the mom stopped showing up. We're 35 grand in. We found out that she had placed the same baby with 2 other families. It was triple dipping. She disappeared. Now, my wife and I said this a couple minutes ago, we believe in new beginnings, not dead end. We don't think it's a dead end. We cheer the new beginning. It's hard sometimes, but if you come with that understanding, you see it differently. Now, when we got the call to go pick up my first son, Liam, it wasn't like it was literally, we signed the documents, we walk out of the room, and if you recall, we lost a little boy and a little girl in miscarriages. We just got our little boy. We walked to the end of the hallway, the adoption director is on the line, on the phone, and she hangs up, and she's just been crying. She's like, I don't know what to tell you. Would you like to raise twins? We're like, what are you talking about? She's like, I don't know how to say this. You must have been praying. I know you lost a little boy and a little girl. There's a birth mom who heard your story. She lives 20 minutes away, and she's going to have a baby born 5 days after Liam. It's a girl. You want to raise a baby girl and a baby boy like twins. Now, if we would have had the first miscarriage work out, we would have never had that experience, never had the experience with the second. If the first adoption would have worked out, we would have never had that experience to adopt a baby girl and a baby boy. The second one, that would have never happened. The story gets better. Because when God comes, he comes with arms open, brother. And arms full, man.
Yeah.
11 months later, Liam's mom calls us, birth mom, and says, I don't know if you guys can do this financially or emotionally, but Liam has a full blood brother. And we'd like to keep the boys together if you're open for it. And absolutely, we said yes. In 13 months, we adopt 3 kids. If the first adoption would have worked out, we would have never, ever had the opportunity to have 3 kids in 13 months. We couldn't be more happy. there was such a gift in the failure. There was such a gift that came later that we had no idea about. We were on the page 16 of the 100-page book. And I feel like now we're just on page 24 because there's so much yet to be written. I mean, I told you the preschool graduation we went to today was just, it's a riot. I mean, I am a father of kids that look up to me, and how I live my life is an example of how they can live their life. So you better freaking believe I'm going to show up, right?
How does one start to think and approach life like you? You gave me the 5 F's and stuff like that, but like someone who's listening to this that is looking at like all the things that's wrong with them. I got a lot of birthmarks. I have this. I'm weird. I'm weird in all of these ways, but Ben seems to just have this confidence. He knows this stuff and he can go on and attack. He's able to get up there and do, horribly difficult things in the gym and take this approach as, see these hardships as new beginnings. How do you start? Where's like the starting point for someone? You're 40 years in the making. And there were a lot of, I'm sure this did not happen overnight for you to develop into the person you are now. But where does a person start, young and old? Where do they start to become essentially, not to just blatantly kiss your butt, but more like you in the way that you approach these things? How do you start by doing that? That's really tricky.
It's not tricky at all. You had mentioned the word weird. I would take weird and freaking own it and run with it. Own it, baby. Own it. I love the word intriguing. The most intriguing people in this world are just that. DJ Khaled, I have nothing like him, and he is nothing like me. We don't look alike. We don't leave it. I don't know where he lives, right? But I tell you what, he is so intriguing to me. I was watching an interview of him, and this is going to answer your question. He's sitting there, and if you guys know DJ Khaled, he's like, we the best. Another one. DJ
right? Khaled.
Exactly. I mean, and you look at him, and he looked like he stole all the neighborhood window drapes, sewed them, and put them on like clothing. His style is so fresh. It's so cool. And I have kind of a funky style sometimes, but he's sitting in this interview on his beach house, and he takes over the interview. He's like, hey, tell you what, interviewer, I want you to ask me a question. And the interviewer's like, okay, AJ, I want to ask you a question. And he's like, okay, I want to ask you a question. Then he's like, ask me if I'm crazy. Hey, DJ Khaled, are you crazy? And he's like, I'm absolutely crazy. And it's people that are seen as crazy. Jesus Christ was seen as absolutely crazy. That are the ones that make crazy memories. They're crazy memorable. They're weird. They're unique. They're peculiar. Be that person. Be the person that when you walk in the door, that they're like, man, there's a force about him. And I don't know if I like it or not, or I don't know. You know what they say, right? It's just different. That's intriguing. I need to know more. Be the person. Go ahead.
Because people are probably concerned. I think I am too. Like, I'm concerned about what even strangers, which is it's really dumb, but I'm concerned about what random strangers think about me, people that I'll never see again. Like, how do you flip that from like, they're going to say something bad about me, they're going to be looking bad about me, they're going to say all these things. Is it fake it till you make it a little bit? Is it like they're looking at me because they're intrigued? Is it just shifting? Is it just that conscious shift of a mindset and then just trying to act it out?
You own it until it's really you, man.
Yeah.
And I would remember this though, own it with kindness. I think part of my life, I owned it with arrogance and owned it with a little bit of a victim anger mentality.
Okay.
And I'm like, yeah, let's freaking show you, man.
Yeah.
But instead, I mean, you guys can go and just to prove that what I'm saying just doesn't sound good, go on my YouTube videos. I had one video of the adoption reveal because, by the way, my family had no clue that we had adopted those kids. We did a reveal that on social media and YouTube and all the platforms has seen about 70 million people views it. Go see what comments they say and then see how I react. I believe it's cool to be, we're talking about crazy, be crazy kind. Now, it's natural for me, guys. I'm a warrior. Like, I can kill people with these hands. Like, I've trained jiu-jitsu martial arts with the best dudes in the world for the majority of my life. Isn't it interesting, though, that the smallest dude, me, has never ever had to swing a fist? I've never had to punch anybody. I believe that we have the opportunity, crazy kind. It doesn't mean that I don't naturally get angry and upset. Absolutely. I naturally, if someone punches me, I want to freaking punch you in the face. But it's what I call a pause. And I believe there's power in a pause. And I call it focus for 5. If I can just focus for like 5 seconds. Some of us, it's going to take 5 minutes. If we're not so natural, maybe 5 hours, 5 days. But you know what's sad is those of you out there listening to this, it's happened to me. You had maybe a family member say something or do something to you. It's been 5 years, my friend, and you haven't talked with them. It's been 5 months and you still haven't talked with your son or daughter. It's been 5 days and your spouse is still wondering if you're going to talk with them. It's been 5 hours and your kid is still wondering if you're going to forgive them for what they did. Hopefully, sooner or later, my friends out there, make it 5 seconds so that you can react, and you can react with kindness like a victor, not a victim. And you can prove that crazy kindness will trump anything less than that. Because I believe that in our soul, we're good people. The majority of people are good people. We have good intentions. We just get to be reminded that there's good people out there. And that's for us to do. That's for us to step up and do those things when we don't want to do it. And those are the complete victor opportunities and the victor chances for us to show that.
I love it. I love it, man. Where can people follow everything? You mentioned your website, Ben Kjar, BENKJAR.com. Is just your name on social media? Where else can people kind of follow up with what you're doing? Maybe reach out to you. You know, I'm sure there's going to be people listening, especially young people who are feeling kind of down, probably about the way they look. And I think they want to get a little bit of your, you know, like confidence juju, you know? So where can people get a hold of you?
A little bit of secret sauce.
Thanks,
guys. If you go to my website, that's like the epicenter, and that will connect you to everything else. I have a cool opportunity to speak. I probably speak 50, 60 times a year, which is a huge blessing. But I'm pretty active on social media. My YouTube, I'm pretty active. I'm always putting like little short videos, long videos on there. I'm trying to do I'm not trying. I don't like the word. I'm doing my best to give as much content as possible. For a lot of my life, I hid because I wanted to be everybody else version 2.0. And I finally realized that Ben Kjar version 1.0 was way more impactful than anybody else's fake version 2. And you guys out there who are doing that, because we do that a lot of times, even as adults, we try to be somebody else. And it's not going to work. We weren't created for that. We're created to shine in who we are. And I'm going to invite you guys to do that and follow my journey, because it's about to get pretty big. We're doing a documentary that will be out in 12 to 15 months, 18 months or so. We're going to be streaming. We'll go into theaters. There's going to be a book that's going to be launched at the same time. We're doing everything we can to give back and to be go-givers and to just leave the world a little bit better place.
Awesome, man. Well, the world's a better place with you in it. And I'm so grateful to your parents for raising you with that kind of mentality to help you kind of steer you on this path to become the person you are. Thank you so much for giving me your time, man. I mean, time's a very valuable resource, and you gave it to talk to me and come on this little show and everything. So I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing all of your approach with my audience. I think it's extremely valuable.
You're the man. God bless. Thank you for putting your time and your effort into this. And man, if we have some time to live and we have life to live, what better way to live than doing stuff like this?
Awesome. All right. Thank you for listening, guys.
If you enjoy these kinds of complex conversations and want to try to apply them in your own life, check out my free download, Debate to Dialogue, a guide on having productive conversations on religion and politics. It's available at www.cylinderradio.com/debate to dialogue.